Hey, fancy seeing you here. You ready? Ready for round two?
Can't believe it.
Round four.
Round two.
So much math.
Yeah, that's why I have a Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, who was it earlier saying something about career or I can't remember what it was. And I was like, oh, why did I go into this? Just kidding. If anything, all of these amazing speakers today have reaffirmed my love for photojournalism and why we do this. So, hey everyone.
So no one can hear us now, right?
Well, yes, they can, and they just heard you, but
They
that is
did.
okay.
So we're live. Okay.
We are
Hi.
live. We have always been live.
That's right. Okay.
But don't you worry, Janet. This is a safe space and a friendly crowd. So,
I get it.
yeah, we're just waiting for people to join back on, to come back from the break. We are going to go over what the essentials is and all that good stuff. So if you have been here for any of the other classes, you can just go ahead and take this extra time for a even longer break. I guess we can jump in, right? Right, Polly? We good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So hello. Oh no, that's you, Polly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time if this is your first session for day 2 or first session with the essentials at all. Yesterday was amazing, so many great speakers, and we learned so much. And thanks to everyone for the great questions. We had some good, deep conversations yesterday, and also for the first half of today. My name is Polly. I'm the founder of Black Women Photographers, and I'm happy to be co-hosting this with Danielle, who is a photojournalist and community team member of the Everyday Projects.
Aw, thank you, Polly. I cherish this time we have together too with all the other speakers. It really is such a joy and highlight of my entire year. So for those of you who are newly joining, and for those of you who have been here, I bet you could say this yourself now, but the essentials are free online classes about navigating the photojournalism industry made in partnerships with grassroots photo organizations working toward the best things ever: inclusivity, equity, and access in the media. So that is the Everyday Projects, Black Women Photographers, and Photo Wings. As Polly mentioned, I am a community team member of the Everyday Projects, which is a global community of visual storytellers all committed to using imagery to combat harmful misperceptions and to rise above persistent inequality. And we're a nonprofit, and we work really hard to provide opportunities, structure, support, and direction for the diverse and worldwide range of everyday photographers. And again, here with the amazing one and only Polly, founder of Black Women Photographers.
Yes, you can learn more about Black Women Photographers at blackwomenphotographers.com. The Essentials is one of our favorite educational programs that we do throughout the year. And again, this would not be possible without our partner, Photo Wings, who helped make this free, and the previous seasons free for all, and also for our transcription, that this will be transcribed in Spanish and French afterwards.
And thank you again, big massive shout out to those helping behind the scenes so that this all runs smoothly and beautifully without any hiccups. And I just wanted to say thank you to a few of those on the Everyday Projects team who have worked to make this happen. That would be Rebecca Gibeon and Fiona Washera, as well as Austin Merrill, who along with Peter DeCampo are the co-founders of the Everyday Project. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
We're continuing today, the second half, with some more incredible teachers who will touch on their expertise. Each session will include time for a Q&A at the end. So please, please, please drop your questions in the Q&A box. We will save plenty of time for that at the end. It's a safe space, so ask any questions you might have and get it answered by the speakers. Again, no matter what stage of your practice you're at, though, we really hope that you take time to listen and learn a lot from them.
Yes, wealth of information. And just as you know, the videos will be recorded and available on our website. So take note of our websites, URLs, social media handles to keep up with when those recordings go up on the website, but also with all the other incredible things that, our organizations are doing. We give grants out for projects. We're always up to something awesome. So just follow us, make sure you're following all of us. And with that, drum roll, please.
Yes, I'm so excited about today's session with Janet. I'm going to read your bio again. I really hope I do you justice. Like, everybody is just so incredible. Janet Jarman, who has years of industry experience, not only as a photojournalist, working for some of the most prominent publications, but also now as a filmmaker. Based in Mexico City for more than a decade, Janet's work has been published in outlets such as National Geographic, Smithsonian Magazine, GEO, and the New York Times, among many others. Her photographs have been featured at Visa por Image and have received awards in Pictures of the Year International, POY Latam, and Latin America Fotografia. And she's a member of Everyday Latin America. And her most recent long-term project, Birth Wars, includes a feature-length documentary film and a forthcoming book supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Janet, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you for inviting me here. Thank you. Huge thanks to Everyday Projects, to Black women photographers and Photo Wings. It's a real honor to be asked to be part of this series of photo talks and to discuss this topic of photographers moving towards filmmaking. If you're here listening, you might be asking, does it even make sense? Is it worth all the effort? And if yes, how do we go about it? So I think I'm going to share my screen. First, I'll open this. Where did you all go? Okay, there we go. Everything okay with that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
great.
yes. That's my thank you, everybody. So photography to filmmaking. So first of all, let me give you some background as to why I started to incorporate film into my skill set of visual journalism. It was rather a long and winding path. Many of the tools we have at our disposal today were not available when I started this journey. And filmmaking is still a journey. You cannot wake up one day and just say, okay, from now on onwards, I'm going to create films. In fact, I vividly remember my skepticism many years ago when news organizations, mentors of mine, and eventually clients began to encourage video storytelling. I was still convinced then that only the still photograph had the power to make people stop, feel, and reflect. I was a purist, and admittedly, I was daunted by the equipment and the editing skills required to make compelling films. Sound, however, did fascinate me. While driving all over South Florida during my first newspaper job, I frequently listened to public radio. I loved how journalists made stories come alive. Radio journalists made stories come alive using ambient sounds and poignant interviews. It was as if a person's voice and form of expression seemed equal to the power of light or gesture in a photograph, and a unique natural sound could take me closer to the essence of a situation. So I felt a new surge of excitement the first time I did a project for which I shot stills and recorded audio interviews, and I began to feel strongly about pursuing this approach in more depth. Multimedia pioneers like Rich Beckman and Brian Storm actively encouraged me in this direction. And I gradually progressed from creating photo slideshows with audio to transitioning into producing short stories for editorial clients and nonprofit organizations. I still had mixed emotions about shooting video, but once the motion quality DSLR cameras was satisfactory and editing software became affordable, there was just no longer any technical or financial excuse for not incorporating video into my stories. I also believe that branching out and diversifying my way of working made sense from a business perspective. So most of my editorial assignment work at that time remained still photography only. However, emboldened by some successful self-initiated projects and feeling that this was a way I could tell stories with more depth and nuance, I started to generate ideas for which I could produce both a photo slideshow and a video. So here's some of my first ideas. This is a story I did on police reform in Mexico in a small municipality that didn't have a police force. And this ended up in called Reforming Mexico's Police, and they did a video as well. So I pitched these ideas mostly to Mexico correspondents of international publications, world picture desk editors and video editors, mostly the New York Times, but not exclusively, getting everyone on the same page for a comprehensive story that a bureau had, for a comprehensive story that was not initiated in-house with one of their staff people was often difficult. And I was fortunate that the bureau head of Mexico at that time, Randy Archibald, took a real interest in my work, this hybrid model. And in the stories I presented, he nudged things along, and the newspapers did some really interesting, adventurous projects. On every one of these projects, I felt like I was consistently reinventing myself, opening new ways of thinking and seeing. So I want to show you another one on a humanitarian in Chiapas who was going one by one to burn victims who could not get any help in the hospitals. And he's done this for decades, and he is one of my heroes, Don Sergio. And this also, I also made a video for this. So you can see I was trying to do both things at one time, and we can get to that in the Q&A. But it was definitely not easy, but in these situations, there was a lot of repetitive action, and I could go back, and I was close, not far from where I live. So that made it easier to try to do both. I was very pleased that these stories were published at the time. Some gained industry recognition. I enjoyed working closely with photo and video editors, but this vision that multimedia was the wave of the future and that people who had both photo and video skills would have a competitive advantage soon turned out to seem a bit unrealistic to me. At least I thought. Sometimes I felt that editors found my approach overly ambitious. It didn't seem to fit into the way they were used to working with freelancers. Oh, just one more. That's another one I did for the Wall Street Journal that also we made a video for that. So on the one hand, I saw tremendous value in this approach to telling compelling stories that I cared about, such as women's rights and the environment. But on the other hand, working on projects using motion and stills was extremely time consuming, equipment intensive compared to photography alone. I was also frustrated that editorial budgets could barely cover the production costs of multimedia projects. So I began to have some doubts whether this model could be sustainable. And then suddenly things changed. Sorry, I'm guiding myself here, so I won't go over my time. Dramatically, when one video editor, Sujong Kang, and the New York Times Health Science editor, Celia Duggar, decided to support one of my hybrid projects, a photo and video story about midwives that I had initiated in Chiapas, Mexico. It took a few months to convince them, but the 20 photo slideshow and short film turned into a surprise hit. And the result changed the course of my career. I will be forever grateful to both of them for believing in this project. Let me show you how it turned out. I'll show you a few photos, still photos first, and then we'll go with the video. So I'm going to stop sharing now because I think the video might look better from from you where you are. I've sent Danielle the link, and if you could please play the New York Times, the first video, that'd be great.
Yes, perfect. And this is awesome, Janet. Loving it. So you can see this, right? The video?
I can.
Yes?
Mhm.
Okay. Hopefully the sound works here. I have it on a second screen, so you can hear the sound?
I heard that.
Al de alala stivos va le talam le band de school contigi is cabeza le talamame. Ora la yog betene le talish lectis cabeza. Gracias a Dios la yag otoya porque ya shata munela. Ya na escola e ya na escola. Filan kodan yaş kalteki kalya de bombe la kalduti kodan ayı şu çanaca aleti gün bu kola var ya mero bu kola var mero kaşamat tak mama
Ti había más o menos como 6 de la tarde de como ya le doctor kalabiliyor medical to heart special clinic clinic como bem se halta ela hat çabuk hala kalmış çahat da niye ister çok ben astopo ela se ala pero bom ama helavet ismi alarak kaldık ama helavet hiç petorla peto hiç kötü hiç
¿por qué se mueren? Pues a lo mejor porque pues están en una población muy lejana, así que no tienen mucho acceso al centro de salud. Son las parteras son de primer contacto con las embarazadas. Pues yo creo que es unirlas todas a las parteras tradicionales junto con nosotras y involucrarlo en el sistema de salud, no están involucradas. Saben un montón, saben, yo creo que hasta saben muchísimo más que yo, siendo yo una profesional. Y espero que también ellas están dispuestas pues a relacionarse también con nosotras, porque lo que queremos es trabajar en equipo, porque tampoco quiero quitarle el trabajo a la partera tradicional.
Thank you.
Wow, so powerful, Janet. Thank you. I'm gonna go back on mute and you can share screen again.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. There was a did anybody hear the music? Was the music cut out of that? Somehow they had composed this beautiful piece that I didn't hear where I am, but you can just imagine that if the music was there. I hope you could hear it.
I could, but I hope everyone else could. We'll drop the link in the chat though, just to make sure that
Oh, that's
people
great.
go back and see it again. I hope so. I hope they sounded
I'm
good on
ready.
my end. I really enjoyed it.
I'm so happy about that. Yeah. I'm not that far away, but I'm pretty far away. So I was doing some screen sharing tests. They weren't working so well. But anyway, here we go again. So back to this project. Thank you so much for watching that and coordinating that share. This film and slideshow generated a lot of attention, especially in the global maternal health community. It's a surprise to me. It became a springboard to my being offered more ambitious and longer projects on this topic, such as a film 1 year later for the nonprofit Every Mother Counts that was published in Nat Geo's short film showcase. So you see, although working independently as a freelancer can be lonely and daunting at times, it is worth continuing on projects you believe in deeply. You never know how things might evolve, and be patient and believe in yourself. The New York Times short film also caught the eye of the MacArthur Foundation, who approached me about applying for a grant to take my coverage to a new level and make a feature-length documentary about maternal health challenges in Mexico focused on its birth culture. Receiving this grant changed the course of my career even more, as you can imagine. In front of me was a whole new and exciting challenge. I mean, really exciting. I had to dig into the art of filmmaking and supercharge every journalism skill I had ever learned and everything I've been striving towards for the past 15 years. A dear friend and colleague, an extremely gifted filmmaker named Candice Barbeau, helped me push through my initial fears to really unleash the filmmaker inside me. She insisted that I stop saying the word video. You're a cinematographer and a filmmaker now, she repeatedly said. So at the start of the process, I had to decide that what was the story I wanted to tell and how was I going to go about it. And I wanted to show the difference that midwives were making in women's lives, contrast their care with the one women received in institutions, hospitals, and how the challenges they might face, that they faced and the fight that they had to engage in. I didn't want a lot of talking heads in the film. I wanted to show action and emotion and really draw people in and not tell people what to think, but show, not tell. This meant that I had to go into the trenches of healthcare, follow a number of midwives and doctors over time, and contrast their way of working with women in institutional hospital care. I wanted to generate a connection between the viewers and the characters. In order to achieve all this, sorry about the noise, I did 6 months of research and scouting, and then put together a very small team that included a field producer, a professional sound mixer, and myself. We went out on the road for long stretches for 1.5 years while communicating consistently with the editor and the post-production teams. The entire process, shooting, editing, post-production, and marketing, took just under 4 years and resulted in a film called Birth Wars. I would now like to have to go out again, and I'd like to show you the trailer for this film.
All right, going to share my screen again. Okay, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, and Janet said, just scroll to the bottom, but as I was scrolling, I was like, oh, no, everyone has to see this. Look at all these awards. OMG, awards and recognitions, like, wow. To be like, I'm gonna try filmmaking and then to make this, like, very impressive. All right, here we go. Let me enter full screen. I'm going to unmute and press play. And Janet, you can give me a thumbs up if it's all flowing and going.
Ella no quiere ir al hospital, quiere que su parto sea en su casa. Ella confía mucho en que todo va a estar bien y yo tengo que seguirla. Partería es muy espiritual. Para ser partera tiene que nacerte del corazón, tienes que decidir serlo, tienes que sentirlo en la sangre, pues. Y es eso, frustración.
La próxima cesárea.
Me siento con todas las ganas y toda la actitud de trabajar y que toquemos puertas y nos digan, no, pues no, pues deja tus papeles, pues te hablan.
Tu primer embarazo, ¿verdad? Creo que las barreras más fuertes son la educación y el machismo.
Mashiwa chica min capaz na cara mina de capaz de olale tan se cortan ya mine o pas de mina pasa no que tal
Es de que las parteras sepan cómo trabajan los médicos y los médicos sepan cómo trabajan.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that worked out. So one aspect of filmmaking I'd love is that films can have a long shelf life, and they take a lot of effort and time, but they can remain relevant for a long time. And that is definitely one of their attractions to me. My aim continues. I continue with this topic, and I'd like to keep adding to an important global dialogue on reproductive rights. Since the film's premiere, I've expanded my maternal health coverage globally, and I've recently worked in Pakistan and Indonesia, together with local teams of professionals. I anticipate continuing on this path for the foreseeable future, as well as my environment work. So now enough about my personal story, but I hope it was useful to see the progress or the organic path that led me here. Let me offer a few general thoughts on film. First, as you can tell, I struggled over how to be a hybrid photojournalist and filmmaker simultaneously in our present industry. I've concluded that it's very difficult to do both at the same time due to the demands of each process. Also, I've come to realize that I have a different mindset now when shooting stills and video. For stills, I find myself seeking to capture the essence of an entire scene conveyed in a single moment. And for motion, I'm thinking of how to paint a scene through a succession of wide, medium, and close-up images. I love shooting motion now. I love film, cinema, Candace, yeah. But my photographic and journalistic eye and approach still directs the core of my style. I'm not a distant observer. I want to be inside a scene where emotion is being experienced. I want to be present, spontaneous, completely in the moment. I want to capture the essence or truth in a situation and portray it in a balanced way. And that's what I've always tried to accomplish with my work, with my still photography work, to achieve access in delicate situations and to make viewers feel like they are really there with me. So that's my visual storytelling style. And I'm just translating that to my motion work. And secondly, success depends first and foremost on being a strong storyteller. No matter how much equipment you add to your creative tool set, and there's a lot that they will offer you, being an experienced journalist and storyteller will set you apart, and master that first would be my advice. Filmmaking is a very different skill set and a very rewarding one. Knowing how to conduct revealing interviews, how to find interesting situations, and how to create stories that have a compelling narrative have a compelling narrative arc is paramount. It's sometimes easy to get lost in the technical challenges of filmmaking, but once you pull your focus back to the story, magic can happen. So now let me offer some concrete guidelines about filmmaking that I've learned along the way. A film is about characters and making them relatable. Make me care is the mantra. That's what I hear all the time, and that's what we have to do. Always have that in mind when creating your film. And ideally, a film needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. That magical narrative arc, it sounds logical, but it's really more difficult to achieve than one thinks. A purely descriptive film hardly ever excites anyone. Viewers may forgive a bad visual. I won't be from with a photo background, but not bad audio. Audio is underappreciated, but it's just crucial for the success of any film. I love audio and I love working with professional audio mixers. Invest time in getting natural sound called ambient sound, get a good quality microphone, and some wireless lavaliers for interviews. Don't think you can rely on music to mask mistakes. And shoot with the edit in mind. I think we sometimes don't do that. The editor can make the film sing, and their main complaint is working with directors who throw a bunch of footage at them and say, go figure it out. Make their life easier and more productive, especially when the editor might turn out to be you. I will mention some common mistakes from the transitions from photo to film. I've made them, but what you want to do is keep your footage very well organized. Every day, set the date and the time code for your camera. If sound is done with separate equipment, make sure time codes are synchronized, or you'll have a really horrible time editing. Every morning, synchronize, and throughout the shoot, make sure frames per second are consistent throughout. Hold your shot to capture the entire action of a scene, and provide a few seconds before and after of recording for editing purposes. So this will help a lot with transitions. Don't hurry and run to another scene, because this will make a huge difference if you have a little bit of space recording to the transition in the flow of the scenes. And this will help the editor a lot. Let people walk in and out of frames. Don't follow them unless it's necessary for the purpose and that action has a purpose. Think in sequences. Shoot wide, medium, and tight shots to build scenes and offer variety for editing. Room tone. Do a few minutes, please, of room tone before and after every interview. Just the sound of the room. It will help tremendously in the edit if you have to cut. It's sometimes an editor's one of the big complaints. Invest in a good quality tripod that's really easy to set up in seconds. Don't think we can fix that in post. I think a lot of times with digital, we're thinking in stills and motion. We'll fix that in post, but I suggest getting it right while shooting. Post is very expensive and really can't solve everything. So to close, some general advice to all of you, not just film, but for photo, for life, whatever. Professional, think hard about what really defines success for you. Is it getting the next assignment for a prestigious international publication? Remember, this can be a fleeting and uncertain path. Is it to be part of a community that can really create change? Is it living a full life and feeling like you are participating in society by making impact with your work? So this answer will differ for everyone. For me, it has always been important to try to tell stories in all of their complexity and nuance, and to be part of a community and to also feel like I'm making impact is very important. Filmmaking became a way to do just that. It meant being able to record people telling their own stories and adding more storytelling elements like sound and motion, and sometimes elements that I couldn't get in just one photo. So if possible, spend time telling your story. It's a way of respecting our profession or our craft and practice, and more importantly, of respecting the people in our stories. And it's always better than parachuting into people's lives for just an hour or two, like we are sometimes asked to do. And apply this respect to your own colleagues as well. Be good to other journalists, because we all need each other more now than ever. And at the end of the day, the most important thing we can do is just try to be humble and thoughtful people who are able to move beyond stereotypes and labels to connect with people at the heart level, soul to soul. So we can get to your, and if you think that, I thought, well, I'll have a team it's much nicer working with a team sometimes. And that was one of my favorite things about film, but sometimes you're still alone. in the rain. This picture makes me laugh so hard. Okay, I have some, I don't think I have time to go over these right now, but if you want me to quickly, some really great resources.
Maybe quickly, because we do have
Gotta be
a
quick.
long list of questions for you. But yeah, I think this is always really helpful if people want specifics of where to actually find these opportunities. So yes.
Yeah, for sure. I have these. So I'm still screen sharing, right?
No. Wait, Janet, I said yes.
Okay. All right. I was going to take you to these individual websites. I will
Oh,
screen share.
okay. Yeah, we don't have to do that. Maybe
Okay, well, no, I have it now.
oh,
So
there
now
we
I'm
go.
screen-
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Okay,
just so people can like screenshot it and maybe
Yeah.
just kind of briefly tell what each one is.
Yes, I'll be really quick on this. I'm amazed, and it's so exciting today. There's so much information there. We're so lucky. We have so much information. There's so much incredible learning available out there online. In the beginning, I would start going to 2-day courses, and I just, it didn't work. I finally asked Candace to come down. And we went through a lot together, but I learned so much in the beginning of my career and throughout everything. If you all have a chance, you could learn so much from Brian Storm at Media Storm. He has, did I put it down here? Media Storm, training, workshops, online training, post-production. Taken some of these courses. I've known Brian for a long time and his team, and it's a great learning tool. So then Bill Gentile is a professor, an Emmy award-winning professor of journalism. And he also has a workshop called, his big theme, he teaches the backpack journalist. And I can say that after having worked with a team and being able to, have a team, I'm now looking at the editorial world and thinking of how I can mix video or film back into, keep working for clients, but, on a smaller scale, not a feature-length documentary. And I'm finding that I want to go back and do this sort of backpack journalism, and I'll end up having to do things a lot completely by myself. So that's something that is really a good skill to have. It's how I started out. I started by myself trying to do everything. Then I invited one person, this incredible woman, Katy, around, and we went and did stories all over Mexico, and I taught her audio. And then I got the film grant, and that allowed me to have a much bigger team, not a bigger team, but just definitely not meaning more people, but just, we can explain that later. But now if I'm going back and I don't have a team and I don't have a budget, then I'm going to do everything by myself, and backpack journalism, I would recommend to people to do everything yourself. Pamela Yates is an incredible award-winning filmmaker, human rights activist. Please visit her site, her organization, Skylight. We did about her. Nope, not that one. But you have the link. And she also offers courses, residencies, I think. It's in Spanish and Portuguese. Just an incredible resource for our filmmaking community. And then Mary Virginia Swanson is also an incredible leader in our industry. And she has wonderful workshops called La Luz workshops. And the part of the MacArthur grant was to make a book. And I realized after the film, I went and shot still photos of the same topic all through the pandemic. And then I took this, I was sort of like going into making a film. There were parts of that I didn't know. I knew how to tell a story. I knew how to tell a longer story. I knew the journalism side, but the distribution and marketing, I had to learn a lot. And it was very challenging, but I just took a bookmaking course with her. It was phenomenal. I think the slides are still up there. You can take the course. It was just full of information on how to do everything. And then organizations, go to the docsociety.org. You can learn everything. You can learn so much about everything about making a film, tons of support. The International Documentary Association. And then, I was trying to find all these for you, and they're 10 best documentary websites. Maybe take a look at that last site and go through all those. And then, with wonderful people in the field, Lauren Greenfield was a huge inspiration to me. She really does it all. So she's made lots of movies and still started as a still photographer. Cheryl Schwartz also, and Christina Cusau Shaul, I also got to know a long time ago as a still photographer, and he moved into filmmaking. And we know Amy Vitale and her still photos, and also makes films. And we came from a similar background and similar people who were mentors for our multimedia and filmmaking. So yeah, take a look, and there's tons of inspirational people, examples. I'm certainly still learning. And yeah, these are photos that will go in the book, but I won't go through those. We have time later. And I think that's, what did I put at the end of this? I know you have a lot of questions. Okay, I think that's it. And I would love to hear all of your questions. I hope that didn't take too long, but maybe I answered all of your questions already. Hope so.
Wow, so amazing. And look at all those beautiful photos. I was like, oh, I want to see. But wow, I'm just so impressed by you and your photography and your filmmaking and all of this experience and knowledge that you have shared with us. I mean, that was like a crash course in how to transition, how to add filmmaking into your repertoire. So that was like amazing, Janet. Thank you so much. So we do have a lot of questions and we have time, so that's good. Naturally, there's a lot of questions that people have around gear, because with filmmaking, I mean, the kit can be overwhelming, as you have said, and expensive. So here are the questions related to gear. First of all, can you give any advice on, sort of essential bare basics that people can start off with? Like, what kit would you recommend for beginner filmmakers or anyone who wants to get into filmmaking but has no experience and maybe doesn't have a huge budget? Yeah, let's start with that, and then we can piggyback because there are more questions about gear.
Oh no. Okay. So I knew that was going to come up, but I have to admit, I'm just not a huge gear person. I really am.
Well, that's comforting, because if not, and you can still make films like this, then I think that's what everyone wants to hear. So, but continue.
No, I mean, it's not to say I haven't learned a ton about gear, but I guess my biggest advice would be not to let the gear just dominate your mind. Because it did. I really struggled. I got this, substantial grant all of a sudden, and I mean, nothing's all of a sudden, but it's here. And then I thought, well, I have to, step this up. This needs, this is a film, and then you have to think. You have to think of where you want. First of all, where you want to distribute your film. If your goal is Netflix, good luck. That's a lot of a high goal. But if that's a goal, then they would have a list of equipment that would be acceptable to them. And so you would have to check out that list. And when I first started out a long time ago, I was just using a DSLR, a Mark III. I probably did the police story with a Mark II. But who cares? That was what was acceptable then. And then I had some Zoom recorders on the top of my camera, and then I added a lavalier mic. You should see this contraption. We all build these contraptions. So I had the still camera, and then the Zoom recorder on top, and then a lav on the top, and the XLR inputs. And then, so that looked like a giant V, and then the camera underneath that. And then it was just too big. I used a monopod. I love stabilization, and I'm always using a monopod in the field, and tripods for interviews. And I really think that makes a difference. So I would definitely say get a strong tripod. That was one of the first and strangest things I'd ever bought as a still photographer moving into film. I'll never forget the day I went to B&H, and I was like, had major shopping anxiety, and just walked into the video section, and I'd never even been in that part of the store because I went straight to the back. And this guy just looked at me, and he was probably thinking, oh, you're one of those converts. I was talking about tripods, and he said, so how much do you want to spend on your legs? And I thought, that's the strangest question. And then I thought, oh, legs of the tripod. Okay, legs of the tripod. And then, oh, you have to get, it's all these parts. And then, so I stayed in the video section, and part of it's just getting, that was a long time ago, but I got a wonderful tripod that I still have that day. And I like that it's really fast. You can set it up really quickly with just one switch. And so, yeah, you can work with that. And then when I did the film, I thought, well, I need a cinema camera. So I started looking at Sony, and I quickly, went out on the first shoot of the film, and I quickly realized this is like, having shot with Canon all your life and then taking a Nikon out to a big job. So you can't just, it was just too different for me. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to just stick with Canon. And I loved the C300, and that worked well for me. And it was small enough at the time to, it wasn't too wieldy, but it was still pretty wieldy. And then I did buy a sound mixer, a sound devices mixer for, for the team and for future work. So we had that for the sound mixer. But then that's when you're doing a film with a budget, or I could have rented that. But like I think I heard yesterday, all the equipment that's available for rental, because it does get really, really expensive. So that was sort of, but now that I'm going back and maybe trying to do everything by myself, I did get a Sony 7S III because I really think that it will be better in low light. And I really want to move back to just being completely, compact, having just one camera and, one monopod or tripod, or just sometimes you rest the monopod on your waist pack. So I think one camera that obviously shoots both, and then invest in a microphone and the basic kit. I would say a camera, maybe a second camera. It doesn't have to be the exact, well, it helps if it's the same quality or the same one. And then one shotgun directional mic, and maybe a lavalier set with the capacity to mic 2 people. And then you would build on that. And then maybe you'd be able to mic 3 people and maybe 4. And I'm talking documentary work. This is not fiction. This is like, I also don't think that, I have to say, it's not the camera. It really is the eye and the brain and the heart and the worldview and the research of the person making the film. I've seen films, that's what I might go out with now. But I recently had a job for a newspaper, and imagine coming off the film and having, gone through the whole thing. I can barely even, the C300 now just seems enormous. I can't believe I use that. And I'm surprised how well it blended in. That's another thing I learned. I know you have a lot of questions, but I thought in film, everything, but maybe, people will be so scared of all this equipment. It has to be small. I have to be discreet, because I've been trying to be discreet my whole life in still photography. And I used to look at TV teams and think I could never do that. Look, the equipment's just huge. And so, I was trying to be discreet, but then I found out people really love video. They love film and they love to be filmed. And so people are upset now sometimes when they're like, you're only doing still photography and you're not filming. This is not a film. And so, yeah, I think people are fine with that, but I still think we need to really pare down and be discreet, and not only for discretion and places we go and communities we enter, and being respectful, but also for security reasons. So I hope that answered. There's so much equipment. You just have to talk to everybody. And there are so many. The B&H website has videos, tons. There are tons of videos out there about, and once you learn the lingo, it's like in that first day in the video department, I was like, okay, lingo, this is a language. And by watching tons of videos, you learn, you just learn. And the resources I gave you, you will learn so much. I think if you would start, you could start there, and there are other great teaching places. But yeah.
Thank you so much. Golden. And I think one important thing that Janet is saying here that I'd like to stress again is sometimes, just start small, start with what you can, start with where you are, and then upgrade from there. Because sometimes I feel like a lot of times in our industry, we're like, oh, we have to have it all. We have to be here. We have to have everything. But no, really, you can start small.
Sorry, Danielle.
Yeah.
I was talking about the iPhone, the assignment I had recently, to go from using the C300. And this client, I did this still essay, and by the way, and then it was so weird to have him go, oh, do you have some video? it's like, is this like an afterthought, or no, it wasn't an afterthought, but it was just like, do you have some video? And so I wrote back to the editor and said, well, do you want a budget? Like the sound person I usually work with is on a contract for 2 weeks out. And I wanted to know if he wanted me to build a little team. He's like, can you shoot this on your iPhone, please? And I thought, oh, of course. Yes, I can shoot this on my iPhone, of course. And so people are making films on their iPhone or on any phone. It doesn't have to be on their cell phone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I might do that next.
Yeah, and that'd be one way to cut down the weight and number
Yeah.
of but just to like, because a couple people have asked this, so just straight on quick answer, not like quick, but just like, this should be, what mic do you use for audio? Like literally brand, model. I am horrible with gear too. I'm like, I don't know, it has megapixels, but what mic do you use if you're able to answer?
Okay, I'm gonna have to go in the closet. I think
Okay.
it's a Sennheiser MK66 or ME66. I can really provide. I would love to provide a list of things I have.
Okay, yeah.
I will write it all down, because I'm sorry I didn't get to that. I was trying so hard to figure out what might I be able to say about this whole thing in 25 minutes, and then the list. Yeah,
it was great. It was amazing.
Okay. So definitely
and,
Sennheiser, but there's tons of, I mean, you can just go up. It depends on if you could spend from $200 to $3,000. There's just such a range. So really, I think the microphone will depend on budget, but you would definitely want somewhere in your bag a directional mic and the lavaliers.
cool, great. Okay, and then one more quick question before we kick it off to Polly, because there are many. A lot of people have questions too about, like, how do you decide whether a story will be told through still images or will take a more audio visual form? And also, when you are doing photo and video, how do you juggle both? How do you flip flop between both?
Okay, yeah, that's the hardest. It's not hard to answer. I've tried it so many times. Let's see, when I first started out, like I said, I was using just one still camera and putting all the audio gear on the top and the hot shoe, and I had a monopod, and I really was just walking around. I wish I had that picture. You should see me in a hospital outfit with this giant monopod with this thing that I had made. It looked as big as the C300 on top. And I could do both, because you could just flip a switch on a DSLR, and I'd be like, go between stills and photo all the time. And like I said in the talk, I've once I dedicated with the grant, the MacArthur grant, that was obviously, I had to dedicate all of my time to, I said, no, this is a film, and I'm not going to go back and forth in the film between stills and cinema. There's just no way I can do that. I'm dedicating everything, all my time, to film, and I had to do that. And then I learned how important that is to actually try to separate if you can. I know it's not ideal. And then after that, I went back. I mean, Candace told me, she goes, don't be afraid to just do all film and just dedicate yourself only to that. And don't even think about stills in the field, because you will have a chance after this to go back. You will have a lot of contacts. You can go make the stills. And I thought, no, you can't do that, because you can't just go, you miss moments like that. So I'd say in the field, I try to concentrate on one or the other now. And I think stories that have a lot of, like the ones I did earlier for newspapers, they had a lot of repetitive action. So I could really say, okay, well, I'll photograph, Don Sergio with these two clients now, and then I'll switch to video for the third one. And you will never have the same pictures. You could do screenshots, but I have not done that still. So I really think about it that way. I choose one, and I think, how much motion is there, how it, I just decide. Like there's a water story I've been working on, and I shot it all for the last year, all in stills. And towards the end of that, I was thinking, I started getting into all sorts of machinery situations. And I thought I just thought you get to a certain point where you're thinking, I'm done with the stills. And this is such a motion story. I have to photograph this now. I have to do video now or motion now. And then you just start doing that. It's really hard, but I would say to know some stories really lend themselves to motion and some stories really lend themselves to stills more to other ones. The story I just did recently was on the one with the iPhone. Was the whole time I was shooting stills, I kept thinking this really is a motion story because it's got artisans and they're etching glass on machines and there's just wild motion everywhere. So I think you can do any story in stills or motion and have tons of impact. Some might lend themselves a bit more to motion. And I guess my advice would be not to, if you do have time or if you can make the time to really focus on one or the other, because something will, if you try to do both, something will suffer. In the very beginning, some of my first pieces, years ago when I still was skeptical, you should see you can see the progression a little bit on my website. If you go back, I would shoot still. And then I'd be like, okay, like in Aguas Negras, a story about sewage fertilizing the Valle de Mezquital. And so I thought, these are stills, I love them. And then all of a sudden I was standing at the end of this with Conagua people on this little triangle of land. And I was seeing all of the sewage of the entire city of Mexico just going down these two rivers right in front of me. And if I'd fallen into it, it would have been horrible. And it was just so powerful, this water, and started moving. And I thought, okay, well, that's definitely motion. This is better in motion. And then you can see as I progressed, and then I went into the police reform story, the access was so delicate. And I thought, I'm definitely doing this as a still story. This is a long time ago. I would definitely have done it as a film now. So I started shooting stills. And then the minute I got to my first scene, fantastic access. I have to do stills on this. It's a newspaper, this is New York Times. And I saw the practice and everything unfolding and people running around, the drills. And I thought, no, this is totally film. And at that time I could I just shot more video but I had repetitive situations again. So again, just try to choose one or the other at that moment. I've gone back now and I've been in the field recently and I find myself right back where I was maybe 10 years ago thinking, I want to do both, but you must have the discipline to just finish one and then start the other.
Thank you. We talked in previous classes about like the different permissions needed when out on assignment for photos, like different consent forms and release forms. Are there different permissions needed for a film or is it about the same?
Definitely when I started making this larger film, a feature-length film, in the film world, the model release situation seemed to be a bit similar to the advertising or commercial model release situation in still photography. This is changing, but I definitely thought I needed model releases, and it depends on the country and the place, on whatever. But it also, for me, it's much more important than whether, I just want to make sure that the people in the film are protected. I mean, you want to make sure that you're protected, but you also want to think more about, for me, the people in the film. For me, the model release was about, first, it's what you do in film. You have to have it because a film is a much different distribution and output than a editorial job. And so it was a definite from that perspective. But then I also wanted it to be a definite because I want people to have informed consent. I want them to know what this project is about and my sincere intentions of everything I'm trying to do and trying to achieve with this. And so for me, it was definitely important. And I've actually thought, after having model releases for everything in the film, certainly in still photography before, I would never photograph, without consent in situations. It would be verbal consent. We're all used to that. And I don't feel, it's just, and you definitely know when people don't want their photo, and then there's a dialogue that happens. But I definitely think I will I'm working on a brief editorial consent form that I'll use in my still photography as often as I can. Like if you're on protests on the street, that's hard, but my stories tend to be very personal and very often very intimate. So I would like to have that for editorial photography as well.
You mentioned earlier about how the power of film and how it can just live on and just like it feels like it can just be long. It can, sometimes live longer than a photo in some sense. When it comes to like, okay, you've done the film, how do you go about putting it out in the world? Was that like promotion and marketing look different compared to when it's still assignments? And then in previous classes, we were talking about pitching. Do you do the same type of pitching when it comes to films, or is that when you are entering the competition space?
Yeah, definitely. The distribution and the output of a film was new to me. And again, there's so much information online and there's so much, you can learn. But we decided to try to go the festival route first. And so the festivals are fairly easy to know about, and their websites that have, all the festivals. And then you start getting into a circuit, a communication circuit, and you have people invite you to apply. And, there's the festivals are all out there, and, so that I thought that would be one way to get the film out there. But I was also very concerned, and you have to also think with a film, there's a lot of attention to the impact part of filmmaking, and how will you make impact, and will you have an impact campaign? And there are companies, not companies, but outlets, organizations dedicated to helping you figure out your impact campaign, which would hopefully lead to an education campaign. And then if you would want distribution, wider distribution, say TV or Netflix or some of the streaming, that's a whole different route. And sometimes people would try to get an agent, and just like you would in photography. But that is really tricky. I would think if there's one thing I missed, I came from a photojournalism background, and I had most of my contacts in photojournalism. And making a film, the first film was like a very serious story and much bigger and with different equipment. But I wish I had had more time in the beginning to really study distribution models. And now I know a lot more, but there are those outlets. And that's why before making the book, I was just so grateful for Mary Virginia Swanson's for the La Luz workshop book course, because it helped me learn all of those things, those details about what to do after you have the material and how you do this. So there are places for sure where you can learn, but if you would have time before making a film to really learn everything about the second part. People told us, they said, making the film is one thing, but once you finish the filming and the editing and the post-production, you're only halfway there. So you definitely, if you have the time, if it works, just learn all of that first. So that, and some people say you need to be planning your impact campaign from the first scene that you shoot. And so, yeah, I had a lot of contacts. I've been working on this topic for a couple of years, and I had developed a list, and I definitely had started all of that. But once you start shooting and getting in the field, it's so immersive and so full on that unless you have a team that can dedicate to the impact campaign and all of the, the distribution, that would be a really great thing to have as part of your team. People who were definitely, it's great to have your team in the field, and I wanted the team to be as small as it could be, and so we could be discreet for many reasons. And but if at that time I'd had a separate group that was learning this other part, then that would have been helpful, because when it's just such a small team, you're learning it all and shooting it all. And so try to learn as much as you can about that beforehand. So yeah, it's very different. The pitching, it's the idea is the same. I'm sure you've learned a lot more about pitching and how to make your how to talk about your work. It's so important, and learning how to write about it, and then having a film and public speaking, and then learning how to, I would say what's so different about photography now is just how much you have to do of the marketing of your own work. And if I told people who were asking me to go, if they said, I'm studying photojournalism now, I would say, well, you can study photojournalism. That's great. But I would have a list of other things you should also be studying. And it would definitely be writing, and a public speaking course is fantastic. And computer science. The other day, I had my first card and get corrupted. I've been shooting digital since 2004. And I thought, okay, this only happens to other cards, not my SanDisk. And I thought, whoa, that's terrible. I was like, oh, of course you go online and YouTube and you find these people taking cards and hard drives apart. And you're like, wow, I really wish I had studied that. And so engineering, there's so many things, so many aspects that go into our work today, and with all of the technology, the bottom line is the storytelling and the journalism and the ethics, and the heart that you put into your work. All of that has to be there, but there's all this other stuff around that.
Along those same lines, when you were mentioning editing, how do you, I guess, organize? Because like when it comes to photos, it's a lot different, right? It's like 1,000 photos. It feels a lot more manageable than, I don't know, like 1,000 hours of film. Like, how do you organize your film? Any tips and tricks on how to just keep your footage organized, and how you build that cohesive story from start to finish?
Okay, so yeah, that was really daunting as well. You definitely just need to keep trying to get more hard drives. Then they become from 2 terabytes. I remember when they had ones that were like, 1 terabyte. You're like, oh, that's just huge. And then what could I fill 1 terabyte with as a still photographer? And then with film, you just started going, oh, I think I need 5 terabytes. Whoa, maybe 14 would be good. And so then with a film, then you're thinking just maybe I need more than 14 terabytes. I would say every time just be extremely, the workflow it can be tedious, but it's so rewarding if you can just it's just a whole different level of organization, of coming back every night and every day and making 2 copies of everything and separating those copies somehow, not having them in the same bag, obviously, and but just definitely every day, and come up with a workflow that is extremely disciplined. It's really hard when you're in the field and you're shooting for like 15 hours and things just unfold, and then maybe the next day you don't have anything to do because that whole scene falls through. But just as disciplined as you can, and day by day, and then every time you get back from the field, logging that material and having, the editor would go through it and tag things. And I think I definitely, coming from a still photo background and a journalism background, I'm not going to say I shoot too much, but I shot film or cinema in a similar fashion, this organic process. You go out in the field and then you might go down this path and maybe this scene works and then maybe that one doesn't. So you end up accumulating. I learned that people coming strictly from a film background would probably do more pre-production, but my pre-production I found always turned into production, because when you're doing pre-production, it's not so vague, you're trying to find a story. But one time I went to Guerrero at the beginning of the film and I thought, okay, I'm going to be back for 3 days. I'm going there personally because at the school, I'm not getting emails. I'm not getting return emails. So I think I'll just go there. And then the director invited me in, and then I ended up staying there 3 days, and then everything opened up. and I had to stay like 4 weeks. And so that was pre-production, which was supposed to be 3 days, have a couple of meetings, figure out what you want to do. So with documentary, this whole as concept of going out and doing pre-production and then dividing it into this box and then saying, now I'm going to go out and film and I have just 10 days to do this. It doesn't work quite like that on a feature documentary film. So there's got to be a lot of flexibility, which means there has to be a lot of organization and a lot of duplications. Sorry, some people have two backups, some people have 3, and logging as much as you can, and then tagging, and those images would be an editor's job, and just staying really on top of that, or it will be a disaster. I mean, I go back and do still assignments now. I was like, should this class be, it's from photo to filmmaking, but it doesn't just keep going. You can still go back to stills, like some assignments will be stills and some will be filmmaking. And that's what I'm happiest about, is to be able to do both. You know, now I can actually say, that was the whole goal in the beginning, to, you know, diversify your, or diversify your, for business reasons, your skills. And so to be able to really be able to choose and say, okay, I will do this on this one and that, or to offer both. So when I go back to stills, I'm like, wow, that's just one folder I'm downloading tonight. Wow, it took 2 minutes. Okay. Let's but yeah, you spend like an hour or two afterwards or longer at the end of this long day, but you have to stay on top of it.
Well, we are a little over time, but we do have one more question that I think is really important to address. So we're going to make our outro a little shorter than it normally is, just so we can get more time with you, Janet, because this has all been very valuable. So photos tend to be a little faster to make, you know, you point and you take the picture, but with a camera, you have to shoot, you know, to hold the shot for a lot longer. So is there a difference in building trust and community between those two mediums, photography and filmmaking, or is the approach about the same? And also for tough moments, like when someone's crying, like the gentleman in the first film, you know, with photography, you can maybe just take a couple frames and then kind of put your camera down and try to be present. But with filmmaking, you have to hold the camera. So is that also, like, do you have any tips on like how to kind of go through those tougher moments?
No, that's a great question. And that was one of my biggest, I mean, it wasn't a challenge. Like I said, I thought it would be such a challenge going into the film with just bigger equipment, and even with 2 people or 3 people instead of just myself. With myself, with just one person, there's so much rapport you can build with just body language and eyes. The eyes say so much, and you can really just have be really discreet in a very sensitive situation. And I was by myself then with one other person, and I did have a monopod, and I put the camera very, you know, sort of behind me, not behind me, but I really had to just, and that made me, that situation was just so sad. And that's why I actually want to go, I would like to get, it's another reason I'm dedicated to getting, you know, smaller equipment and to constantly be trying to be as discreet as possible. But that's for sensitive situations. And I've been in so many, and again, that's why, and it really is the same approach, and it's the same body language, and it's the same sensitivity. The camera's different. I think people are a lot more used to video and film cameras now, and they have become much smaller. So it's not as much of a problem. Like I said, they're sometimes upset. Wait, you are making a film, aren't you? And so it's the same. So the questions about the approach. When you get to having a dedicated audio person, sound person with you, that's a different situation, but you have to respect, if you're going to work that way, you have to respect the audio person, the audio, that's their profession. They have to be able to do professionally what they need to do. So, and, you know, just like you do. So you have to go into like all of the situations I went into with Birth Wars. I knew the people, I talked to the people, I was able to explain to them what we were doing and why we were doing it, and, you know, who we were, you know, as a team. So I think that, you know, before shooting, and I just think if you explain that, and the holding the shot is, I found myself explaining to like Guadalupe in the movie, and, you know, I said, I would explain to people, this is how we have to work to do a great job and to tell your story really well. This is how we have to work. And you explain it to people and they're like, okay, yeah, I get it. And I said, if you see me, I would tell people, if you see me and I'm not saying anything, it's because I can't, it's because of the audio, it's because I'm filming. So video was definitely much different. With a still photo, you can actually sometimes, that's the hardest thing for me, because I want to interact and I want to talk to the person. I want people to feel really comfortable with me. And with a still photo, you can take a break and say something, but with video, you will ruin your, you know, you have to be quiet. So it became a joke. They would just laugh at me every now and then, like, oh, there she is, you know, silence, you know, or everybody quiet. And they would sort of, people get it. They just know, oh, they're starting to film now. So, and you would explain that I don't want you to pay any attention. And I was just amazed that you could be, you know, have the same discreet fly on the wall, make yourself disappear approach with film that you can with stills, if you do it the right way. And if you pick the right team. That's a whole different story. You have to, as a filmmaker and directing, you have to be able to explain to your team and have people on your team who understand how you work, and how you might not have a call sheet every night at midnight, because you don't know what you're doing the next day. It's a different type. I said I'm sort of a hybrid here, and not a hybrid. I just said I have a journalistic background and this is how I work. It's very organic, can be spontaneous. It's might not be what you've been accustomed to. And as long as you're upfront about that, and then everybody sees how you work, and then you need a team that can actually, you're just all blending together in the field and just, you know, as one and moving as one. And so you definitely have to find the right people, and you have to find people who care about this work and this topic, but also people who will have the knowledge to work in these extremely delicate situations. The delicate for reasons of, you know, humanity and, you know, the social interactions, but also for, you know, safety, and people need to know how to work in these areas. So building a team is essential for that.
Wow.
For your question,
Janet, this has been amazing and so thorough and rich. Like I'm like, okay, Janet, when's the textbook coming out on everything that you've shared with us here today? Because yeah, it was very, you did a great job. You did a great job at breaking it down, and thank you for sharing your beautiful, poignant, sensitive work with us. And if I can just request something from you, if it's not too much, if not, we can add it to the list of, you know, equipment that we'll make sure to share with everyone after the series concludes. But while Polly and I are sort of going over the intro and everything again, for those who are joining, could you in the chat just kind of in your own words talk about just kind of define what a field producer is, what a director is, because you know how you've been talking a lot about teams, but some of those terms are a little like, what do those people even do? While we're doing the intro and outro, if you don't mind. If not, you can just, we'll figure it out later, but in your own words, if you don't mind. But thank you once again so much for all of your knowledge. It's really been a pleasure to have you here with us today. And I'm just, again, so impressed with everything that you do, and can't wait to see what you do next. I'll be myself looking for the textbook.
Okay. Well, thank you.
In addition to the book, but
well, no, cool. I just thank the people who took the time to educate me going into this, and I've given you some of their names. They know so much, and there's so many more, but and there's so many where we can all help each other. And in film, that's what I loved about film also, is the community around it, because I'd been working alone for so, you know, we're out there in the field as still photographers sometimes. And when you build a team, small or even it's so fun to work that way. And then you can produce so much more and share so much more knowledge. And then you have situations like this, opportunities to try to consolidate it just the best you can. So thank you for your interest. And Polly, Danielle, it was just incredible to be here with you and to be with everyone who took their time to listen. Thank you. Good luck. I will promise I will try to write something detailed. Yeah, but good luck. And well, yeah, I can't wait to hear the next talk. All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you.